Welcome to Behind Sports. My name is Scott Reinen. Thanks for joining us today. Today's guest is Mr. J.B. Bernstein, President and CEO of Access Group, an athlete management and representation company. J.B., thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, the first thing I'd like to do is just find out a little bit more about you so everybody can get to know you a bit better and maybe give some of your background.
Sounds great. I've been a sports agent since 1994. Before that, I was one of the original guys at a company called Upper Deck, which is how I got into sports. And at Upper Deck, I got to be kind of a business development guy. So I was able to help get different licenses, work with different players, World Cup soccer, Looney Tunes, licensing. It's kind of what you might call the kicker, I guess. Sure. I did every kind of little special teams duty over there at Upper Deck, creating a lot of product, Upper Deck Authenticated. And in 94, I just got kind of burned out and ended up just moving on from Upper Deck and starting my own business. And I was really lucky. My first client was a guy named Barry Sanders. And I started representing athletes, and over the years, I picked up, I worked with Emmit Smith, Barry Bonds, Curtis Martin, Bruce Smith, and my concept was always to have a small boutique agency. I didn't want to be IMG. I didn't want to have 1,000 players. I wanted, 5 to 10 guys that I could manage personally, that I would be their guy. I would negotiate their deals, and I've been doing that since '94. In 2007, I came up with the idea for $1 Million Arm, which I know we'll get to later, which is kind of an ancillary business to what I'm doing, and a little bit of left field pitch from me, but it turned out working out pretty good.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely talk about that because it's a really cool story, and there's some big stuff coming up, I think early in 2014, I know, for $1 Million Arm. Just if we could talk a little bit more about your company. Now, you're representing these guys, and let's just take Barry Sanders, for instance. Are you doing contract negotiations with them, with the teams, or is this more on the marketing side?
We do everything but their playing contract.
Okay.
Very early on, I realized that playing contracts were a game of diminishing returns. The playing contract, when I came into the business in '94, I already saw getting down to 1% and 2%. In addition to that, I saw guys that were willing to work for a flat fee. Hey, give me season tickets and $100,000 just to be close to an athlete, and a lawyer would do your contract. The other thing about the NFL, which is predominantly what my clients are, is the contracts weren't guaranteed. So contract revenue never really interested me in the same way all the other ancillary income interests me. The other part of it was the contract income. The agent doesn't really do anything. It didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. The contracts are pretty much set. You're the #1 draft pick. This is what you're going to make. Yeah. That's what it's going to be. With what I do, I create everything. The athlete, sure, I'm using his reputation, but I have to go out and make the relationships with the companies. I have to help them understand how to create deals. You can't just go to Pepsi and say, hey, I represent Barry Sanders. You have to go to them and say, hey, here's the concept. This is how we can do it. This is how you can pay for it. These are the budgets we can pull it from. And you have to be a lot more creative. So I felt a lot more pride in creating programs and doing the marketing, the sponsorship, fan involvement, the memorabilia. Obviously now, when I first started, it wasn't a big deal, but the social networking has become a very big deal. So these are all things where I feel like I add value, and I feel a lot more pride taking money in that regard than just taking a point or two off some guy's contract who goes out there and, basically risks his life every week. Yeah. Why sit home and watch it on DirecTV,
Yeah, no, I understand. It definitely makes some sense. Now, if we could let's talk about one of your clients specifically, and maybe if you could go through a little bit about how you did. I guess Barry Sanders recently just got the Madden cover, right, for Madden 25. So, what kind of stuff goes into that as far as the negotiations and contacting EA, and are you sitting down with Barry and say, hey, this is something we want to do, and then you move forward from there?
Well, Barry's had a long-standing relationship with EA on a lot of levels. He always has been part of the game. Obviously, he's been one of the higher-rated players. Yeah. He's supposed to be on the cover for '99 and retired like 3 days before the season, so they pulled him from the cover. And this year was special because it was a fan vote. So we just mentioned social networking.
Right.
Social networking played a huge role in Barry getting the cover this year, simply because it was fan vote. So he went up against, Ray Lewis and Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and all these retired guys. And then the winner of the retired bracket went up against the current player bracket. So ultimately he was pitted against Adrian Peterson. And there were over 40 million votes cast in this thing. So his social networking and his ability to interact with people online, 15 years after he's played the game, got him to beat out everybody and win the cover. So yeah, it was particularly rewarding just because it's a real affirmation of his fans.
Absolutely.
But the cool part of it, though, was then going to Pepsi and getting the whole Pepsi Max promotion built around it and the Pepsi national advertising and then, Nissan's national ad campaign. So, Barry's probably a unique case study in that, his last season was 98, but yet he has 5 national TV commercials running with 3 different brands. He's a national spokesperson for Verizon. He's a national spokesperson for the Gridiron Hall of Fame program, the Traveling Hall of Fame exhibit. He's the national spokesperson for the Hall of Fame Powerball exhibit. So he's got probably more current deals and more TV deals than pretty much any current football player going right now.
Yeah. Is he an analyst for anybody? Is he working on TV right now as well or not?
It's the one thing that he really shies away from is coaching and broadcasting.
Well, that's what's even more impressive because you see the guys, especially with the fan vote with Jerry Rice. I mean, a lot of these guys are analysts on ESPN and some of the bigger networks, so they're getting all the camera time at this point too. So not only is he is Barry Sanders not on TV as an analyst, but he's still winning the fan vote. That's impressive.
Yeah, and it says a lot more about Barry than it says about me. I mean, I set up the networks and the conduit to the fans, but ultimately he provides the content.
Yeah.
So, if he wasn't interacting with the fans, if he wasn't putting out videos, if he wasn't doing that kind of stuff and creating great content to interact with fans, I mean, I don't think there's an athlete on the planet that sends out more signed merchandise. Every Tuesday he does his Trivia Tuesday. So literally every Tuesday of the year he gives away something. Pretty much every Friday he gives away something. And then there are special events like for Pepsi, this standee you see behind me here, he gave away 2 of those a day signed for 2 weeks straight, the fans who just sent in screenshots of the ad. So great idea for the company because he would get the fans to take screenshots of the ad. And like I said, gave away 20 of these things. So, he really cares about that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. JB, there's another interesting part of your business also that I'd like to talk about, and that's Milestone Marketing. It looks like you've done a bunch with some different athletes. Can you talk about how you're implementing the Milestone Marketing and maybe a couple different athletes besides Barry Sanders that you're working with as well?
Yeah, of course. Milestone Marketing is something that's kind of a specialty to our agency. Back with Upper Deck, I came up with the idea. It was the first time we ever did an athlete memoriam of a record the same way they did the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Stop the games, bring the T-shirts and hats out, and it was for Wayne Gretzky's 800-second goal. And we literally had a cut-in on HSN with a bunch of different products, and it was a really mass organized, the same way we would do a Super Bowl hot market, except it was a player individual record. And it was really, that was 94. It was the first time that had ever been done. So I kind of took that to Dan Marino. We did the Dan Marino 320 touchdowns. And then when I went out on my own, it was really a point that I was able to differentiate myself with other agents. So obviously we did Barry's Run with History, which, as I mentioned, he retired right before the season he broke the record. We did Emmit Smith's Run with History, which was a really huge success. It was the landmark deal, and it's how milestones are now done in the NFL. Favre and all these other guys who came after Emmett took the same deal where the athlete takes the lead, and the deal's in conjunction with the athlete, the team, the Players Association, and the NFL licensees and sponsors. So it's a really unique way to do things, but it gives the athlete the ability to control the record, create the logo, feel like he's part of it.
Yeah.
Then obviously Barry Bonds is probably the biggest example of milestones. I mean, must have been 20 milestones with that guy, everything from 73 home runs, 600 home runs, 660, 700, 716, 755, 762, and then, in between there, obviously, he had a bunch of other records, batting titles,
Right.
So, we got really good at this hot market stuff. We also did Bruce Smith's 199 sacks. It was a weird one because he was in Washington for that. Most of his fans were in Buffalo. So each milestone has its unique circumstances, but there's a specialty to it, understanding how to tie in the HSM piece, the retail piece, the in-stadium piece, the sponsorships. So it's really unique, but ultimately, if you can tie all that together, you can turn these hot markets into a pretty big deal.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I haven't heard of other agencies actually doing that to date. So it's a really unique concept to me. But it seems like there's so much that goes into a lot of these things because they're such big deals. I mean, I remember when Barry Bonds was, getting 73. I mean, it was massive. It was massive at the time.
Yeah, it was. That was probably the thing that prompted him more than anything to want to operate outside of the Players Association for group licensing. The Players Association, the league, there were 17 different logos for the 73 home runs. And he just said there's got to be a better way to do this. And that's going from there forward, we implemented kind of him being the center of that whole program.
Very neat. Very neat. I want to fast forward a little bit. You have some very cool stuff going on right now. And I think the concept is really finding the next best thing, right? That's kind of the whole mantra behind it. You have a program called $1 Million Arm. I'm gonna let you talk about it rather than me talk about it. So give me all the goods on $1 Million Arm if you can. Well,
$1 Million Arm started from a very simple thought that any self-respecting agent would have, which is, where's my Yao Ming?
Right.
Yao Ming is a juggernaut. He's made over $1 billion. His agents have probably cleared over 100 million in commissions. And it just, you stay, where can I find my Yao Ming? And when you think about what Yao Ming really is, it breaks down into three things. A country with more than 1 billion people that has the inroads to be able to leverage a sports athlete. It has broadcasting, merchandising, and sponsorship. The second thing is they have to be nationalistic about sports in some way. And then the third is that they haven't had a big American sports star yet, one of the big team sports.
Right.
So you look, that's what Yao Ming was, and it was hugely successful. I don't have to give you the stats on Yao Ming and what's done for the NBA and basketball in China. But fast forward to 2007, and I started to ask myself that question. So immediately there's only one other country that has 1 billion people, so you're stuck with India. They play cricket. There seems to be a pretty good crossover with cricket and baseball. So we came up with the idea to do an American Idol style contest called the $1 Million Arm, where we'd find the kid who could throw the fastest in India and then try to train him to be a pitcher and create a Yao Ming of baseball, if you will.
Yeah.
So we went there. We saw 38,000 kids. We found these 2 kids. We brought them back, trained for 6 months at USC, and they got signed by the Pirates. One of them made it for 2 seasons and got released, and now he's actually training to be a pitcher, a pitching coach at the MLB Academy they're trying to start in India. The other guy is still in the minor leagues. He's in AA for the Pirates. His name's Rinku Singh. He's a 220-pound lefty, 6'4". The guy can throw in the mid-90s and a really, really good pitcher and a great kid. And we've run the contest now 2 more times. It's now called the Major League Baseball $1 Million Arm.
Okay.
And this spring, Disney's launching a movie called The $1 Million Arm. We have a book coming out, and there'll also be some ESPN documentary programming. So that'll all hit. And the craziest part of this whole thing is not anything I've told you to date, although that stuff sounds crazy. The craziest thing is they chose Jon Hamm to play me.
I was going to get to that.
It's not so great. I mean, I don't.
Hey man, that's a good representation. I tell you what, I'd take that one and run with it. So let's backtrack a little bit if you can. So the program starts, the contest starts in India. You find 2 guys out of, you said 38,000 or 3,800. So the 2 guys come back. Where are they at that point? I mean, do they know baseball? They know cricket, right? So they know how to throw a ball.
They didn't even know baseball was a sport. As a matter of fact, the very first day they came to the United States, I took them to a USC-Washington game.
Okay.
We're sitting in the stands, and it's the beginning of the first inning. It hasn't started yet. You know how the first baseman's rolling ground balls to the infielder in infield practice. And the guy turns to me in Hindi and says, points to the shortstop. He goes, "What did this guy do wrong?" And I said, the game hasn't started, nothing. And he goes, no. He's like, and he's insisting this guy did something wrong. And I said, why do you say that? So he points to the first baseman. He goes, this guy's got a square. Second baseman's got a square. Third baseman has a square. He's like, this guy with the suit of armor. He said, this guy with the suit of armor has a pentagon. He's like, this guy has a mountain. He goes, this guy's got nothing. What did he do wrong? And the two things that hit me at that point was these guys know nothing about baseball because they're asking me why the shortstop doesn't get a base. And the second thing I'm thinking is, as an American, I can't give him an answer why the shortstop doesn't have a base. Right. Why is that the only guy in the infield that doesn't have, it does, you know, I say share second. I mean, you know, it makes sense to me, but how do you explain that to someone who doesn't know anything about baseball? So they went from, that was May 5th of 2008. By November 24th, 2008, they had signed with the Pirates. And by July 2009, that same kid who asked me that question won his first game for the Pirates in the Gulf Coast League.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's never been done in my understanding, and we did a lot of research on this. We've never found a case in the history of sports where a guy went from a position of he's never heard of a sport, didn't know it exists, to in 13 months winning a game as a pitcher, or you know, winning a game as a player.
And a major league level.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So when they came over, did you put them up? I mean, are they living? Because I mean, this is a completely different country. You know, I can only imagine the circumstances for them is just culture shock.
They lived with me.
Okay.
Yeah, they lived with me in my house. They moved in. It was definitely cramped my style. I was single at the time. Yeah. So it was a little weird having two like 18-year-old, I call 18-year-old infants. You know, they had never seen a toilet. They didn't have electricity. Wow. They didn't use computer. They didn't have a phone. They couldn't drive. You know, they didn't speak English. They you know, could only eat certain things. It was a real challenge. They couldn't cook. You know, they had basically been farmers in a village. You know, so they really couldn't do anything. So there was a social side of it. There was the baseball side of it. The learning curve for these guys was so intense and so steep. But yeah, they lived with me, and then they trained at USC with legendary pitching coach Tom House, right, who pitching coach to guys like Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux. As a matter of fact, Randy Johnson came down at one point to visit with the boys when they were at USC. You know, Brian Wilson came to see him. Chan Ho Park, he was the first guy from Korea. Talked to them a lot about being the first player from their country. So because I'm an agent, they had a really unique a unique introduction to baseball, as I was able to bring in a lot of guys to help talk to them about pitching, about being a player, being first from their country. They got to spend a lot of time with Barry Bonds, who explained to them how to be a pitcher from the hitter's point of view, what a hitter's trying to do when he's standing on certain parts of the plate. I mean, the kind of stuff that as a young pitcher, you couldn't dream about getting that kind of education. But the way they sucked it up and jammed it all into their heads was amazing.
That's an incredible story. It really is. So Disney picked up the story, and they're releasing the movie in spring of 2014. Is that right?
May 16th. It's got a pretty good cast. It's Jon Hamm, Alan Arkin, Bill Paxton, the kid from Life of Pi, yep, one of the kids from Slumdog Millionaire, Lake Bell, and Asif Mandvi from The Daily Show. So it's a pretty big cast. Big names. The movie was shot in India and also in Atlanta to double for Los Angeles. And I'm excited about it. I've gotten to see bits and pieces, but I haven't gotten to see the whole thing yet. But from what I've seen, it looks like Disney really put a lot of effort into this, and you know, we're excited as heck.
That's great. Well, congratulations. That's a really cool story, and the kid that's still in AA, I'm definitely going to follow that career. That's something that could be really neat if he keeps progressing through the system as well.
I definitely agree. I mean, you know, like I said, that's we're the only person playing this lottery. So you know, yeah, we keep going back and buying tickets every year. I've got some kids training right now. We'll have tryouts this fall, and then the next contest with MLB. You know, first year we saw 38,000 kids. Second year we saw 100,000 kids. This coming spring we'll see 500,000 kids.
Wow. Awesome. Great. Well, hey, I appreciate you giving us all the information about yourself and about about your company and about the $1 Million Arm. A couple questions I'd like to ask you to kind of close out the interview. Something that we ask most of our guests. Just by working with all these guys and the experiences that you have, what can you say, if you could pinpoint maybe the most outlandish or unique moment in your career?
Gosh, I mean, for a guy like me, there's been so many. I mean, growing up as a kid, you didn't hear about sports agents. There wasn't. I grew up in the '70s. There was no Sports Center. You know, ESPN didn't even start until I was almost 12 years old, and so, you know, I didn't know this job existed. If I had known this job existed, I would have known it was for me. You know, I grew up loving sports. Probably the most surreal moment was when Gretzky broke the 800-second goal record. I was still with Upper Deck at the time. We had the hats and T-shirts, as I told you about, for this hot market program. It took him like 6 games to go from 801 to 802, so we're following him every game, and we're in the locker room. So every period he would come back and he'd be like, "I can't break this record. I can't get a shot." And we're like, "Don't worry about it," because. But after like a week of traveling with the team, it had become so much so, one of the most surreal moments is he breaks the record. We do the hats and T-shirts on the ice. Bruce McNall brings out the Rolls Royce for him literally the game stopped for like 20 minutes. The HSN things going on. It was just, everything worked so perfectly. And at the end of the game, Gretzky, there's a picture of me and him in Hockey Digest. He's got me like in a headlock, and, we're wearing the hats, and I'm just thinking like, oh my God, how did I, just some dope from Long Island, how did I end up in this moment right now? And there were a lot of other milestone moments that I've been a part of, but that was really my first one. I tried not to let on. I was so starstruck and just thinking like, oh my God, Wayne Gretzky knows who I am. That's like the weirdest thing. And now he's like giving me a hug because he broke the all-time scoring record. It was very bizarre.
Well, that's cool. That's really neat. Last question before we wrap up. There's a lot of people who watch the show that aspire to be in the sports industry. Maybe it is a sports agent, marketing representation, what have you. Do you have some advice that you could give these guys? From your career, I know you've seen a lot of things. Love for you to give some advice to those up-and-comers.
Sure. I mean, it's so funny. That's the question I probably get asked more. You would think that people would ask me about athletes I work with, or the question you just asked about giving me a story or whatever. But the number one question I get asked is how to get into the business. So this is kind of the thing I tell them. If you're not lucky enough to be assigned to a guy who ends up being a top draft pick as a roommate in college, if you didn't grow up with one in high school, the best way to do it is to intern, and what you got to do is you got to apply for an internship at a big agency, IMG, Octagon. There are a lot of big agencies out there. And even medium-sized agencies that take interns on for the summer. And it's not even so much about what you learn at the internship, it's about networking. The other way that you get around it is you work for a team, is another great way to network in sports. And the third best way is to work for a big brand like a Pepsi. But my biggest advice to anybody is an MBA is great, all those things are great. I have an MBA, but the big way to break into sports is networking. Gotcha. Because when jobs come up, a lot of those jobs go to people that have already had some experience in the business and know some people, where somebody calls you up and says, hey, these people are looking for somebody. So the earlier you get into the networking mix, the earlier you're known, the earlier you start to build the people in your network in sports, that will help you immensely as you come into the job market and things come up. I mean, I started building my sports networking thing in college, and ultimately it wasn't until '89 that somebody called me up and said, hey, these guys are starting Upper Deck, you should go over. It's a baseball card company. I was working at Procter & Gamble, couldn't have been further from sports. Right. So there's always hope, but the key is you got to just keep pushing that network.
Awesome. Good deal. Hey, JB, I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I can't wait for the movie to come out and to watch these guys come up through the organization with the Pirates and some of the newer guys that are going to win the contest in upcoming years. So,
me too.
Hopefully they don't have to stay at your house any longer, too.
No, we're going to get it. I made that mistake once. From now on, they're living on campus.
There you go. Good deal.
Well, Scott, I appreciate it, man.
All right, JB, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for coming on. My name is Scott Reinen. This is Behind Sports. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.